Hello and welcome to today's episode of Conquer the Day podcast. Today we have two very special guests on the show. We have Kristan and Austin Riley, a powerhouse couple that is sharing all of their insights around how they support each other in their own goals. Now, Kristan has been a client of ours at the Fitness Project for the last year, and Austin has been right by her side, encouraging her, supporting her, and even competing in a half triathlon with her, physically with her on the course. They have an incredible story, and I would say the most valuable thing you can take from this podcast is how to chase goals individually and as a team, where you can chase your own ambitions, but you really support your spouse in theirs and vice versa. And if you struggle with either being vulnerable and sharing what you need with your spouse, or you tend to feel like you're growing in alternate directions, then this is the perfect podcast for you to be listening to. I hope that you enjoy it. Let's turn it over to them. Kristan and Austin here today. These guys are a power couple that has shown what it really looks like to transform individually, but then really support each other as a phenomenal team. And Kristan's had her own incredible physical transformation, but it's been really cool to see not just how she's transformed, but how that has really poured into her family, into her work, into every area of life, including Austin and Kristan's marriage. So we're going to dig into all the real life stuff today. We're going to talk about this incredible race that they've just completed, which you'll hear more about in a little bit, but we're going to talk about the good stuff, the hard, messy parts in the middle, and really get you guys inspired as you're listening to their story. Make sure that you feel ready to support your spouse and vice versa. So Austin, Kristan, thank you for joining us, making it happen, making the time. We're excited to actually dig in with you.
Absolutely. Happy to be here.
Yeah. Awesome. So let's start here. Let's start at the beginning. Let's kind of just set the frame for everybody. So Kristan, we used to talk all the time about how you had too many tabs open, and that was like your life for quite a long time while Austin was deployed. So can you paint us a picture of what life looked like in that messy season? Like before you really got started, you were very overwhelmed. He was away. You were taking on a lot of responsibilities, but what did that too many tabs open actually feel like? Can you enter us into the story of Kristan?
Yeah. So, we've been married a long time, so I've had to take over when he deploys. Before, we have two kids. At the time we had a dog and a cat, and, the kids, I got a high schooler and an elementary student. So between soccer practices and after school care, and then, I own a business, and then I have another job. So between balancing all of those things and trying to keep the house clean and get the kids fed and make sure I have groceries and everything else, it just felt like I could never get ahead. I was drowning. I had to lower my standards from what my expectations were as far as the cleanliness of my house or, my physical health. Like, my life got put on the back burner. I had to make sure I was taking care of everybody else. And it was extremely overwhelming and very, very stressful.
Yes. Not fun.
And when did you realize that you actually needed to recruit some help and support? Obviously, Austin's away at this time, but when did you realize, like, hey, I actually need some support? And what were the stepping stones that kind of fell in place?
Yeah, Lindsay and I had talked a couple of times before. When I first heard about the Fitness Project, and when I first interviewed or when we first talked, I wasn't really ready to make that jump. I was like, I can see this goal setting and put it in the forefront, and I tried by myself. I did, and I did get some fitness in, but it wasn't enough. I didn't have enough self-awareness, I guess, to put myself on the right path. And and then when she called to check in on me one time, I literally broke down. I was crying on the call. I was like, okay, I need help. I need somebody to tell me what to do because I just had decision fatigue. I could not make one more decision. And that was, I couldn't make a meal decision. I couldn't make a decision on what workout to do or what workout program to follow. I needed somebody to tell me what to do to take some of that off my plate so that I could get my life back in line.
I distinctly remember that part of the conversation, which I forgot about until now. But I had said, Kristin, what do you need right now? And if anybody's listening and you've been asked that question and you're like, I don't even know. That's exactly what you said. You're like, I don't even know. After you just after you were just breaking down, and I go, can I tell you what I think you need? And I was like, I think you need help. Like, I think you need someone else to make some decisions for you and just get you some breathing room. And you were like, yeah, it's that.
Yes.
So,
Yes.
a great moment.
And Austin, when you were in that space, obviously you're deployed. That makes it challenging. I can't even imagine what that's like, having a family and being in that situation. But how did you come together in that moment to actually say, hey, this is something that I think you should do, and I do support your decision? Because I think regardless of the space, sometimes people feel like, I can't really ask my spouse for support, or they feel like their spouse isn't going to receive it well. So how did you help and guide that situation while you were away, or what was that process for you as a couple?
So again, going back to Chris, I've been married for 20 years, been together even longer than that. I kind of tend to see and understand when one of us is dealing with something. And again, she had been through this multiple times, deployments. So it was one of those things that I knew she was always, doing her best to control and deal with while I was gone. But at the same time, there was a lot more factors to this one, her having her own business, her being a surgeon in another clinic, and, been dealing with the kids and everything else. So this is kind of the final stepping stone of knowing that I was nearing the retirement, and this was like the last one she had to get through, but there's a lot more going on. And Kristin tends to not express herself like a lot of us do, right? We hold it in, we bottle it up, and you shove it down deep inside until you explode. And it wasn't a bad thing, but I really didn't know until she brought it up. So, again, she was kind of controlling everything as best she could, but she brought this up before the deployment. Now, in saying that, I've done like 3 deployments in the last 3 years, so it was like back to back to back. So after the middle one is when she first started talking to Lindsay, and we were actually on vacation on my parents. She brought it up, and I was, in typical fashion, was like, whatever you want to do that you think is going to help out, I'm all about it. We've been down the road of her trying to do my workouts or my way, and there's certain things that we can help each other with. And I have, a background in personal training and stuff like that as well, but it's just not the same. You as a fitness couple, you definitely, I'm sure, understand there's certain things that one of you wants to do, the other one may not like to do much. And so there's just certain things you have to find that mesh in the middle. And that's where we, that something that you guys were able to help her with is finding what meshes in the middle for us. So I was all about supporting her with it.
Love that. That's such a great mindset. What do you, and off of that, like, Kristin, what was it like for you to actually be able to be vulnerable and open about that? Because I think the reason why I'm teasing this out is because on both sides, people struggle. They struggle to ask for help, and the spouse often won't receive it well, or the spouse might even receive it well, but they're still afraid, right? They're still nervous. Was it just based off of the experience of doing it time and again, or did you have to kind of more say, hey, I believe this is worth it? Like, what was the decision matrix on that?
Yeah, I'm pretty, like you said, I keep things bottled up pretty much most of the time. But when I have my breakdowns, it's like, okay, now we need to talk. I need to get this off my chest. I need to tell you I need help. And I've never felt uncomfortable telling him that. It not for him specifically. Me personally, I hate asking for help. I hate asking for babysitters. I hate asking my family to help fill in. I don't know why I've always struggled with that. So taking on that vulnerability was a big step for me to say, I can't do this alone. I needed help. And so, and when I did, he was more than happy to say, yes, I support you, whatever you need to do to get to where you want to be. Let's do it. So it was good. Yeah. He's always been very supportive.
That's awesome. So Kristin, then as you got into the journey, and I am curious now that you're going to be reflecting back by like a year, what were some of the first wins that made you realize like, oh, I am changing, or I can breathe again? Or what were some of those first initial proof points?
It was, it really was the mental space. Like I enjoyed the physical aspect of it, and I enjoyed the help with the nutrition side of things. But for me, it was much more about the mental space. And making decisions ahead of time, talking about planning out my calendar, putting things on my calendar so that I actually do them, like my workouts. Scheduling time for me so that I'm not going, well, I don't have any time left for me, because I tend to give and give and give myself away to my clients. And I say, well, whatever's left at the end of the day, then I'll go work out. And I never did. And then I was exhausted, and that takes away from my mental space too, because I didn't have any time for my downtime to recover and fill my bucket. When my bucket's empty, I can't give to anybody else. So, I was constantly running on empty. So changing that mindset into, I need to take care of me, not only physically and nutritionally, but mentally. That was a huge help for me. And whether that was through meditation or through journaling or through, just having the conversations that we had about changing the frame of my mind and changing the perspective. That was huge. Those were huge hurdles and wins, big wins.
So you start making all this progress, you start getting some wins and momentum, and then somewhere along the lines, you decide that it's time to do a half triathlon. Obviously there's a gap between there, but what was the decision-making matrix for doing something like that or doing it together? What happened and what led to that decision?
Yeah. So I met my goal of, I lost about 15 pounds. I got under a certain number, and I was thrilled with how I looked and how I felt, and being able to maintain that for more than just a couple of months. And I'm still there. And while I was finishing up that section of the journey, this one was in Italy in his deployment, and he went to Austria and did a half triathlon. Yeah. And he was like, that was fun. We should do this. And I said, you're crazy. No way. So he got home, and for my birthday, 2 weeks after he got home, he bought me a road bike, which I love to cycle anyways. But sneaking it in there. I had a hybrid bike, and we would go biking a little bit, but he really got into the road cycling to train up and then do his half triathlon. So then we started riding more, and he was like, we could do this. We could do one. And I'm like, nah, you're nuts. And then somewhere around December, I think it just kept like, come on, poking just a little bit. And I was like, okay, well, if we're going to do one, we need to pick one that's easy, because I saw the terrain that you were doing in the mountains of Austria, and ain't no way. I'm not a good hill climber on the bikes, and I'm not a good runner. So I was like, we're going to have to train for this. And so we picked one that was supposed to be the fastest half triathlon because it's the flattest. And we started training for that. And, Lindsay built me an amazing program. And we just built on little steps, a 2-mile run, a 4-mile run, an 8-mile run, and build up the swim and the biking. And really the run was the hardest part, but we eventually got there, and then we did it. And I was like, okay, I did that. Yep. Like, I was nervous, but I did that.
I love anything that's a challenge. It's like going through stuff like that, and especially with my background, my type of military background, that stuff's always been. I used to do ruck competitions and different runs, and I'd done a couple, like sprint triathlons over the years, and knew that everything we were doing minus the running, which she's not a huge fan of, that she would be perfectly fine at, and the run she could get there because she's dedicated to stuff like that. So it was just poking and pestering a little bit here and there, like you said,
friendly pester.
I think that's the key. If I were to really think about where couples maybe go wrong with trying to encourage each other, support each other, it's not a playful nudge. A lot of the time, I think it's a dig, or it's like it induces guilt of some kind. It's not like, hey, you can do this, it's going to be awesome. It's very much like, oh, are you sure you need to eat that? Or it's like, it's not encouraging nudges, I think. And that's where it can get sticky.
What do you think would happen, Austin, if she would have said no? Would you just been like, okay, cool, and just kept, on your merry-go life? Like, would you still have supported her as much? Like, I'm curious. Because
I wouldn't have cared regardless. There would have been something else we'd done together. I probably would have still bought her the bike anyways, and we'd have rode. We rode mountain bikes. I've ridden mountain bikes for years, and we've rode mountain bikes together for quite a while. And we love that. And then when I got into the road biking more, I was like, I really enjoy this too. It's not as hard on me realistically as the mountain biking was on my body. So I was like, well, regardless, I would have got her a road bike.
Yeah.
So we just still done stuff like that together. Yeah, the triathlon wouldn't by any means, turn me off of anything. So she actually is the one that ended up choosing it. And I was like, oh, okay.
That's
like
amazing.
I didn't book it or anything. She booked it. Just like I said, it was kind of surprising. She's like, I found one down at White Lake that we can do. And I was like, so we're going to do one?
That's awesome.
I mean, it was a happy moment, right? But it's definitely not a game changer by any means.
Yeah, well, I asked that intentionally because I think that shows where your heart is at.
Yeah,
right.
True.
And I think that sometimes we want our partner to change because we want to change, or we feel like they're holding us back. But there's all these other beliefs that are underneath the surface. We don't actually want them to just do the race in this, right? It's like, oh, well, I want you to improve, or I want you to lose weight, whatever the thing is. But to be able to say, hey, no, this is really a fun thing that we should do together. And if you don't want to do it, I'm buying you a bike either way, and we'll go and do something else. It shows that it's the foundation of having a healthy relationship, I would say. It's like being able to actually care about what's best for your partner.
Right.
Awesome. What was it like to see her start crushing it, though? What was it like to actually see her like tapping it?
It was awesome. I would say anytime. So she was always a swimmer through high school and college, and early on. So like had first kid, and then she slowed down on that stuff a little bit. Obviously, too busy. But she's always crushed me in the pool. There's no question about that. Like I swim great, and I'm a diver. I don't swim fast anywhere. I can run really well. I can bike well. So she would always crush me in the pool. So it was always me trying to keep up with her on that. But running, like I said, she did not like running by any means. I still don't think she likes running very much.
I hate it less.
Yeah, there we go. That's the win.
But right, to watch her go from, maybe it was struggling to get through 2 miles and, at like a 12, 13-minute pace. And not that she's in bad shape or anything, just, running sometimes kind of sucks for people. To watch her go from like running a 12-minute plus mile to running like an 8-minute mile and, doing just fine with it. Like, it was awesome. Like, I was like, dang, you're getting after it. You're really dedicated to this. Cool. So.
Yeah, that's the best. It was an incredible transformation. On the running side specifically is amazing. That brings up a slight sidebar. So in lieu of starting from that beginning pace and struggling through 2 miles to, like you said, you're able to get down to like an 8-something mile. For people, because it's summertime, people are starting to run. And I think a lot of people will assume that they're really, really slow and they're never going to get better at it. So knowing that you hated running and you hate a little less now, what advice would you give to the beginner runner who's just starting, since it's summer and they're kind of discouraged and it feels hard? What would you say, Kristan?
I think what made a huge difference for me was having you analyze my running. When I sent you videos and changing my body posture. And the visualization of when you told me to pull my elbows back, visualize that I'm like pulling my elbows back instead of, I always used to think of myself as like pushing my body forward with my fists, which did like close down my chest and hunch down my shoulders. But visualizing the other way of pulling my elbows back or my shoulders back opened up my chest and it made it a lot easier. I used to struggle a lot with breathing while I ran. But that got incredibly better really fast once I changed my body position. The right shoes also makes a huge difference. Having somebody fun to run with that gives you good nudges or good encouragement, not like, come on, run faster. It's when they're encouraging to you, it makes a huge difference. Most of our running we did together in training up for the race. So that was huge.
I would say the other thing with that too, right? Like any couples that are out there and like you said, listen to this and trying to figure stuff out with us, is there is a huge difference between taking advice from your spouse and taking advice from a professional that's outside of the relationship, right? Is no matter how many times I might say something to Kristan about like, hey, you're running form, is this way or that way based off of my knowledge of it, like going through like pose running form with her and stuff. Taking a video of it and then sending it to a professional that's outside that relationship and having it. She never took offense to me saying anything, and I don't take offense to her telling me if I'm doing something wrong. There's often times where, we might be in the gym doing squats or something. She's like, hey, you look like you're rounding your back a little bit. And I was like, yeah, I'm sore today. It's, you don't get offended by that stuff. Like taking advice from your spouse as best you can, but also seek that professional guidance from outside that will help you cater that more to what you need.
Amen. Well, I think that one of the things that I always tell, because it's always an objection, right? It comes up at the end of the call, like, oh, well, me and my spouse, we're just going to be each other's accountable. but we're going to be each other's accountability partners.
Sure.
It's like, it never works because that's not the nature of the relationship. The nature of the relationship is
Love and
encouragement, friendship, team. But if accountability is, you have to already be great at something for someone to be accountable. So if both of you do not have the standard, it's not going to work. And then it becomes friction, right? It becomes a drag on the relationship versus having accountability and support outside of it. And then when you are together, you can actually coach or team up on the things that you need to do together. Makes it far more effective. I agree.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
Definitely.
And I am curious, how was actually doing the race together? What was it like?
What was that like?
So the half triathlon was a 1.2 mile swim, and then a 56-mile bike ride,
13.
and a 13.1 mile run. So those are the 3 stages in that order. And the goal when we got started was we were going to swim at our own pace. And we figured I was probably going to finish before Austin because, I'm the stronger swimmer. And that I would go ahead and get on my bike and take off. And he's a stronger biker. He was going to catch me in the bike, and then we'd bike the rest of the way together and then do the whole run together. Turns out that's not how that went. I did finish the swim before him.
Yep.
And I got on my bike. And the way White Lake Race does it, they do 2 laps of 28 miles each. And so I was like, okay, I'm at mile number 5. He should be getting on his bike. Like, he's going to catch me. Mile 15, mile 20, mile 25. I'm like, I'm almost back to the race starting point. Where is he? And I even slowed way down when I passed the pit to make sure his bike was not still in the pit. Because, like, okay, if his bike's still there, that means he drowned and I need to go figure out what happened. But when I passed by, his bike was gone. I was like, okay, so he's going to catch me soon. So I went ahead and started the second lap, and he never caught me. I made it all the way around 56 miles and got into the pit. And I was like, man, he still hasn't caught me. Where is he at? And I was there about 5 minutes when he pulled in. I was like, all right, it's time to run.
Yeah, I thought we were totally confident, fully, and based off of anything I've done in the past, my bike time, like I should have caught her.
Mm-hmm.
But again, to go back to this course was not anything what we thought it would be. Like, I've done courses before where, there's times when you get some nice downhill, and like, I'll run 40, 50 mile an hour on a good downhill if I can, right? And like, it doesn't bother me. She doesn't do that.
I don't know.
It's like those little things, like those little factors would let me catch up in certain times. If I knew she was ahead. But she beat me in the swim by like 20 minutes. So like with that 20-minute gap, I was only able to make about 15 minutes because this course was 56 miles of pedaling the entire time. There was no downhill. It was the flattest place on earth that I've ever seen. And, as me trying to make up like 20 minutes, like it wouldn't happen. So same thing. I kept thinking I was going to catch her, kept thinking I was going to catch her. And I showed up and she's in the pit. And I was like, how long have you been here? And she's like, about 5 minutes. I was like, oh my gosh. Like, I really thought I was going to catch up with you and we would be good to start. But it was a good little break for her, like to go into the run too, because then we started the run and we set our pace for that. At the run versus walk intervals that I felt like needed to do to keep us both going, and we were good.
Yeah, that's fantastic.
And all without music.
And all without music. That was the worst part.
And no music, no phones, nothing, right? It's just like solid.
Can't have anything. Yeah, no headphones. Yeah. That was.
They do it for safety reasons. There's reds and stuff.
Yeah, it's totally understandable.
So
yeah, and when we crossed the finish line, I know I've asked Kristan, but I haven't asked you both. What did your kids think? Because they were there.
Oh, they were excited. They were so excited. They met us at the inflatable finish line. My son filmed us running across the finish line with our arms held high, and gave us big hugs. And then it was good. It was cool to see them so excited for us when we got to the finish line.
And of course, they have no idea how cool mom and dad are, right?
Not yet.
They don't have the context. They're like, oh, that's cool.
We like to hope that they think we're cool.
Well, that's such a big deal. And what was your experience of that, like, Austin, being able to complete that, finish that?
They didn't finish the other one in Austria.
Yeah, no, that was nothing but a couple friends. And so it was good having the family there and seeing everybody. And again, the boys were super excited, right? And they always are every time they get to see us do something together, whether it's as an entire family or even just me and Kristan doing something like our teenager especially is a huge supporter. He's all about, he's 15 years old, so there's an 8-year gap between the boys. So yeah, he's starting to drive now, so there's that experience.
Yeah.
He's a good driver though, great driver. But he's always willing to watch, his little brother Forrest, and we go out and ride a motorcycle or go out and work out, do whatever, if it's just something we can do. So they're huge supporters of us for sure. Especially even the little one being, just 7 years old, he's always all about mom and dad doing cool stuff. So
that is pretty inspiring, right? It's a huge deal. That's why I kid about they don't have any idea how cool you are, because that is a very exciting thing.
Yeah.
I mean, you don't think about it as a kid. You see the things your parents do, and you're like, oh yeah, that's my parents. They do that. But if you guys zoom out, that's a huge deal. So what a great example.
I think another thing too, right, is a lot of parents sometimes are scared to get their kids into doing stuff like that with them as well. Landon, our oldest, was always like, I could, earlier in my career when Landon was just, he was born after I joined the military, but we'd be waiting to go, on a jump or something, and I would just put him on top of like the tallest object I could and have him jump off of stuff. So he was, part of that airborne community. I didn't know how to do it. So, he thought it was great. He never had a fear, and he would do anything. Would ask whether it was mud runs. Him and I would go do like the Spartans and mud runs and stuff like that together.
That's cool.
And he was all about it. But the first time we took Max to do one, like he wanted nothing to do with it. So I just drug him through the mud course, the kids' mud course, kicking and screaming. And then after that, he was like, okay, I want to do another one. And then he's asked me, every year, like, hey, we're going to do that mud run course again this year. So like, I get it. Your kids might say no about something sometimes, but sometimes you got to like push them over the edge, literally, all right, to get them to do something. Because his wasn't out of fear of being in the mud or being dirty, because he does all of that. His was fear of, he's a little bit of an introvert sometimes. And there was other people around watching him do something, right? So like, well, if I fail, everybody's going to be like, oh, look at this guy. And so I was like, well, I'm just going to do it with you, and we're going to do it together. I literally just kind of drug him through the mud, and then he enjoyed it.
That's amazing. Yeah, positive role model.
Yeah, and that's a great observation too, because if you just said, oh yeah, you're scared, okay, no worries, it's like that fear would have been almost reinforced.
Yeah.
Right.
Onward, right? It wouldn't have been learned how to overcome it.
It's funny you say that. When I was like in 6th grade, I wanted to learn how to play guitar and play in front of people. And I never really thought of it as a thing I could be afraid of, because my dad always did. And my dad was a musician, and he'd play in front of people. So my brain didn't go, oh, that's something I can't do, because I had a positive role model who was already doing it. So just to speak to that example, like the parents is like, your kids are modeling your behavior and being able to say, hey, we're going to get healthy together. I saw a recent article that said that kids who work out with their parents, like it's one of the most powerful bonds you can build, because it builds that relationship up. So it's kind of like what you said earlier, doing hard things together, right, Austin?
Yeah, that's one of the things that I always talk about. Like for me, us being together in a physical setting like that, it's intimacy, right? It is intimate to me to just be in the gym with her, and we might be doing the same thing, but when I can go from doing what I'm doing into a rest set and go over and like just nudge her and pick on her and be like, hey, what's up? What are you doing? It's a flirting thing, so it's fun. It's out on your first date every time. They're trying to pick in the gym,
Amen.
That's a really great perspective. Yes, I love it. And quality time allows that to open up, right? So between a lot of great themes here, and I would be curious, because you guys, nobody knows how many hobbies you guys have, except me, I think, in this room. But you guys have a ton of hobbies. You both have businesses. You just retired, and you work, and you have 2 kids, and they have activities, and they're not driving officially yet. So in many similar situations, I think the parents would both say, hey, we're too busy to like do fitness or health. Like it wouldn't even be a thought because of how busy they are. Y'all are super busy. So what advice or maybe words of encouragement would you give to somebody who's kind of stuck in that mindset of like, I'm too busy, it's too much? And you were there at the beginning of your journey and you made the decision anyway, but as a unit, how do you kind of get through that personally, and what would you advise?
I think you just have to make it a priority. One of the things that I heard in an audiobook recently was you have to focus on the result that you want, or focus on the goal. And it's, you sacrifice now for what you want eventually. If you're focused on the big goal, say we're talking about weight loss, for example, you focus on the big goal. I may not feel like getting up and going to the gym in the morning. I may not feel like giving up that Kit Kat bar. But my ultimate goal, if that's where I want to go, I know I have to sacrifice now the things that I think I need or the things that I want to get to where I'm going to go. And, you know, putting my health in priority, like you said, you know, it's a great example for our kids. And I'll tell you our 15-year-old, he has been out of school for a month and he's worked out almost every single day.
Wow.
Either that is, you know, he did go to soccer camp, but even when he was done with that, he chose to go to the gym with his aunt or his uncle, and he chooses to get up and do things on a daily basis. But nobody sees that from us.
It's a sacrificial relationship for yourself too, right? Is like, and the one thing, if anybody's trying to get started in this, you know, in a lifestyle, because that's what it is, like trying to have your fitness, it's 100% a lifestyle, whether you're busy or not. But you have to sacrifice the little things, and you're like, well, you know, I'm too tired to do this tonight. Well, if you're too tired to do anything, you probably should just go to bed. Right. But if you can sit on the couch and you can watch TV, right, or you can sit down and you can play video games, great, right? All those things are stress relievers for some people. But if an ultimate goal is to get out and do some physical stuff, and sacrifice that 30 minutes on the couch watching a movie for 30 minutes of going out and doing a walk with your, you know, kids or your spouse or your dog or whatever that is. Yeah. So I'm super forgetful, right? I've been walking around the head so many times at this point that I set alarms on my phone to keep me going with everything. That's even, you know, I like to go to the gym in the morning. I'm an early person anyways. Like, my body wakes me up every day at 5 with or without an alarm, sometimes earlier than that. And I also have a gym partner I go with in the mornings nowadays. More often, one of my buddies asked me to train them, so I started going with him every morning. That helps as well. But even without that, I would get up and I'd go to the gym by myself every morning, and I'd come back, start work, and you know that was an alarm literally waking me up. And then at night, you know, we'd set an alarm to go do something else. But if it's something that you can't physically get yourself to get up and do by yourself, then have your phone yell at you. You know, put a message on there, put an alarm that's just super annoying, whatever. Like, do something that's going to make you at least get up and turn your phone off. Because then when you get up, you might go like, all right, well, I'm up now. I should do this anyways.
Yeah.
Great tip.
And it doesn't have to be huge. Like people starting out on a fitness journey doesn't need to start out with 90 minutes in the gym. I mean, personally don't ever spend 90 minutes in the gym. You know, something as simple as going for a walk or doing some air squats or, you know, some push-ups, or, you know, even if they're on the back of your couch, like doing something physical, get your body moving, put some music on, like get your blood pumping, your heart rate up. And it's amazing how even just starting those little things, how much better you feel.
And then it
Yep.
Yeah. Excellent. Beautiful. And I think that will be well received, because it is the 3 things you said to summarize and close it. You have to want something. Right? You have to want something more than you want the instant gratification of whatever's right in front of you. And you have to constantly bring yourself back to that. You have to make it as easy as possible for yourself by automating some systems that cue you and remind you of what you want. Austin's feedback. And then when all else fails, do less, but still do something. So you can get momentum and you can feel better and build off of that. So beautiful feedback, guys. Awesome. Well, that said, I think that we've summarized it well.
What's next?
What's next?
What's next for you guys? Is there anything else exciting, or is it just, hey, we're gonna figure it out? No plans.
I've actually been struggling with that for a couple of weeks now about what are we going to do next. I know it's not going to be another half triathlon. That was enough.
She's agreed to do a sprint, so I think we'll find a sprint local for sure. And then our oldest, Lana, really wants to we want to finish our Spartan trifecta. So we're going to do our other 2 pieces of the trifecta still. So I assume that probably getting Kristan into that with us will happen. You know, getting out and running, at least doing even the shorter ones. If it's, you know, we'll do the little one with the little one, and then you know, the family wise do the bigger ones. So
that's great.
Like that, and those are always fun, right? Because you get to cool down a little bit in the water here and there, and it's not just a constant thrashing.
That's true. Yeah, y'all come to Vermont. Come do the beast. I'll do it with you. September. The beast.
The beast. Okay.
The Spartan beast.
Oh,
it's a killer one, but we can talk about that another day.
Did it last year, right?
Caitlin and Steven did it.
They said it was one of the most hardest things they've ever done.
And they've done lots of marathons.
And they are. I mean, Steven qualified for Boston. Caitlin ran like almost a 3-hour pace.
Yeah, 3:30.
3:30. So she's not
My.
just, yeah. So she passed out the finish line. I was so proud of her. I was so proud of her. I was like, you're such a badass. Not saying clients you should go do that, by the way, but we are the experts. We're the trained
We have to
professionals.
train for it.
Yes. But yeah, so they did that. They said it was just incredibly hard. So
Yeah.
maybe
Yeah.
that's not where you
We'll
start,
discuss.
right?
We'll
Maybe.
Oh, she
No,
could do it.
You
That'd be
start
fine.
by any means.
But awesome, guys. Well, thank you for sharing. That said, if you're listening to this and you hear Austin and Kristan sharing their story and you're thinking either, man, I really wish my spouse could hear this, or you know somebody who's kind of struggling with this with their inside of their family or their marriage, send this episode to them. Just sharing that first step, sometimes just having a little bit of extra insight or something inspiring can make a huge difference. Just give them some new insights into how to communicate or maybe how to change their expectations. But with that said, we'll look forward to hearing takeaways in the comments. You guys can share that on YouTube or reach out to Brian or Kristan and Austin and I on Facebook. But that said, thank you guys for joining us. Thanks for being here and making it happen again. We're happy we could finally do this.
Yes.
You guys are awesome and great work.
Yeah. Congratulations.
Congratulations. Next chapter. Good stuff. Awesome, guys. Well, you guys have a great rest of your day. Go out and conquer it.
Cheers.